SpongeBob is an icon. Nobody can disagree with that statement. But just like any other famous figure, animated or real, there are both people who love and hate him. Yet in my experience, anybody that grew up in the late 90s through the 2000s seems to have almost the same consensus. SpongeBob is everywhere. This can be seen in today's pop culture, part of millions of memes, is in the middle of his 12th season, and has a third movie in production, and over $13 billion of revenue. But let's go back to the beginning. It all began with a marine biologist named Stephen Hillenburg, who had a passion for both marine life and animation. And while teaching as a marine science educator at the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California, he decided a great way to use both of his talents was to make an educational comic called The Intertidal Zone. Hillenburg created the comic in 1989. It starred a very early rendition of SpongeBob called Bob the Sponge. This design of the character saw him looking much more realistic and had sunglasses, which does not at all resemble the Sponge we know and love today. This comic caught the attention of Martin Olson, who famously played the Chief in Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5. But at this point in time, in 1994, he was a writer for the show Rocko's Modern Life. He gave Hillenburg the idea to turn the comic into a cartoon, which was originally called Sponge Boy Ahoy. This later turned into the show that is airing on TV today. I'm not kidding. On the day of writing this, 13 episodes are airing today. That is 6.5 hours of a 20-year-old show.
SpongeBob SquarePants, only on the best place to turn for new tunes, your Nickelodeon.
Oh boy, now's my chance.
SpongeBob SquarePants is coming in July. Be there and be square.
I'm ready.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
The show first premiered on May 1st, 1999, and was met with good first impressions, but was nowhere near as popular as it would get in the upcoming seasons. The rest of the season gained consistently good reviews and caused the show to rise in popularity. But the show was playing second fiddle to the Rugrats, until
SpongeBob SquarePants, second season.
Season 2 is where the show really started to pick up steam. The season premiered with the episode Your Shoes Untied. The whole season was great. The reviews just kept coming in, and ratings just kept going up.
I think it's probably the character design that I feel is like one of the best parts of SpongeBob. I think that can sort of be partly attributed to Steve Hillenburg. I think it's just like the characters are so distinct.
And finally overtook the Rugrats in popularity, which was a very big occasion for Nickelodeon because it had the two biggest children's shows at the time on their channel. Seasons 2 and 3 are regarded as the best seasons in the show's 20-year run. If you ask almost any person what their favorite episode is, it is almost always an episode from the first 3 seasons. That is because, compared to the other shows airing during this Nickelodeon golden age, it provided a good contrast.
And their personalities are so distinct as well and creative, like a scientific squirrel that lives under the ocean and stuff like that, or like a greedy crab. I think that once you have, the characters and the world are already created, they did a really good job of, coming up with fun, wacky little adventures to put those characters in. I think characters are the best part of SpongeBob.
SpongeBob influenced me in the way of how cartoons were made. I really liked how each episode started off differently from the last one. Some episodes started off with not just SpongeBob, but with other characters like Mr. Krabs or Patrick in their own sort of solo episode.
Along with a great group of characters resulted in a show that stood out from the rest. But the main thing that makes this show so universal is the character dynamic between SpongeBob and Squidward. At first it seems skin deep, just a fun-loving sponge and a buzzkill squid. But as the show went on, it started to blossom into one of the best character dynamics of all time. Squidward was the grown-up and defeated artist that hated everyday life and lives the same old, and SpongeBob was the fun-loving, happy-go-lucky child that indirectly makes Squidward's life more interesting without him even noticing. This dynamic is what made people continue to like it to this day. All the kids that watched it when it was new were SpongeBob, and they have evolved into Squidward, giving them a whole new experience watching the show. But now comes the big stuff. The first SpongeBob movie was released on November 14th, 2004. The movie was in production for about 2 years, and on its opening weekend alone, it made $32 million, which when adjusted for inflation in 2019, is about $43.5 million, which is the most money Nickelodeon films had ever made since the release of the Rugrats movie. The movie was planned to be the end of the series, which is why the movie has such crazy concepts like having the Krusty Krab 2, or Plankton taking over the entire town with remote control buckets on the fishes' heads. But even though Hillenburg wanted it to end, Viacom had other ideas, considering that SpongeBob made up about 30% of Viacom's total revenue. So with production on season 4 about to start, Hillenburg left the show. The release of the movie resulted in an explosion of SpongeBob merchandise and promotions such as toys, cereal, stuffed animals, a Toyota Highlander, commercials, mac and cheese, and plenty of other things not mentioned. To put things into perspective, the first movie grossed $140 million in all-time earnings. The 2015 movie, SpongeBob Sponge Out of Water, made over $325.1 million worldwide in only 4 years of being released.
I guess my earliest memory of SpongeBob is going to preschool and showing like the new episodes and like the weirdness out of it, and I enjoyed it. And I kind of grew up just watching the older episodes and like growing a stronger appreciation for them gradually, even till now, where like I still watch it and I'm like laughing, like even more than before. So yeah, I think I'm continuing to grow up with SpongeBob.
I actually do still enjoy SpongeBob, even in 2019. I don't think the show will ever die. Obviously, the actors, one day, they all eventually will, but I feel like even the earlier episodes, they're still fun to watch, even if you already know what happens.
SpongeBob influenced my sense of humor a lot, where I'd point out really dumb things, be really sarcastic, and just overall stupid. I think like that type of humor stems from SpongeBob, from like jokes from Patrick, the stupidity, and overall like it relates across everything. SpongeBob's humor really can just be for kids, for adults, for anybody, just because how universally stupid it is.
I think SpongeBob will never die because just the overall arc, the overall story, the overall characters in each show and each episode, it's just like timeless. It's these type of characters you grew up with, and they're very close to your heart. And honestly, I think even though if the show gets canceled, these characters will live on in their legacy.
But even though the generation that experienced the original 3-season run of SpongeBob had grown up, the show left an impression on them, which can be seen in the rise of memes. The definition of a meme is an element of a culture or system of behavior that may be considered to be passed from one individual to another by non-genetic means, especially imitation, which in this case, the culture is being shared by the spreading of a humorous image, video, piece of text, etc. that is copied, often with slight variations, and spread rapidly by internet users. When it comes to the internet, SpongeBob could be considered the ruler. Some examples of SpongeBob meme formats are Imagination, I'm a Head Out, Handsome Squidward, SpongeGar, Surprised Patrick, and many, many more. And the forming of the internet's meme culture has extended the life of the show immensely.
I think the new memes that we see in SpongeBob are keeping it alive because each meme is so closely relevant to society.
The show that entertained and brought joy to a generation is now giving us common ground in a world that feels as if it is becoming more and more divided.
Virginia. This is where violent clashes have broken out between white nationalists and counter-protests there.
This porous yellow sea sponge has somehow managed to captivate an entire generation and allow them to express themselves.
It's honestly my favorite things about SpongeBob is seeing it in my own work and seeing it like as another expression of myself.
And of course, these memes aren't just to make jokes about the show. It gives the internet a tool to share political issues and other problems in our society, whether it be the price of college or the housing market or bringing light to male depression. These are all becoming known issues due to the creation and spreading of memes. And most humor from SpongeBob fits the meme humor standard, which is short, sweet, and out of left field.
It's such quality SpongeBob, the earlier seasons. The new ones, no, but when you rewatch the early stuff, it's so dense with jokes where it's after each one, it's just another setup, another punchline. The one I was just watching was Flying Pants, and he had to change the light bulb at the lighthouse, and he's like, "Oh, Old Man Jenkins, he can't see," and right when he changes it, Old Man Jenkins does the most comedic flip around like the lighthouse, and then right after he hits a rock. It's so stupid, but the pacing and everything about it just hits, and it's so comedic. It's the beauty of the animation to it, of the writing. It all comes together to kind of make something too good.
It's almost as if Stephen Hillenburg had planned all of this out, which is very unlikely, but he just happened to have the right comedic style to allow SpongeBob to become a juggernaut in the media landscape.
I think if SpongeBob existed in like a different timeline in which the internet didn't become what it was, I think it would still have the popularity it has. It maybe wouldn't have the same lasting power that it's gone through, but I do think it would have been as memorable and as popular as it was. Definitely you can see like in memes, which I do think are a bit of a cultural indicator, at least for like millennials and Generation Z, which is like what we are. You can definitely see how frequently people will like use an image from SpongeBob or use a line from SpongeBob in like a certain voice, and everybody, like a lot of people, because so many of us grew up watching the show, everyone will like remember those images, like those stills from SpongeBob, or remember those lines, and I guess has given us all sort of like a generational bond, I would say.
So this brings us all the way back to the present day, and with the passing of Hillenburg on November 26th, 2018, nobody could help but wonder if SpongeBob was going to die with him. But with a remake of the 2003 hit SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom and a third movie on the way, I think it's safe to say that the internet will not let Hillenburg or his happy yellow pal be forgotten.